Can you hear me?
Yeah, buddy. Gotcha.
Then we are live.
Yeah, guy. Welcome, everybody. It is Spit. This is the show where David and Scott talk all things surfing and oftentimes go off the reservation and talk, sourdough bread and or philosophy. And it's Tuesday. It is September 22nd, the day of our Lord. Good afternoon, good morning, good midday, David.
Good midday to you, Scott. Sourdough hasn't made it onto the podcast yet. Sourdough conversation only took place off air.
Oh, dude, I just pulled out 2 big loaves. I was going to do some bread bragging. In fact, I did. If you go to my Instagram on my story, you can see my bread brag that I just pulled out. It's steaming hot right now.
So this has been a huge trend with COVID and quarantine is for some reason, everybody's getting into baking bread. I want to hear your journey. I have not gotten in yet. I do a lot of cooking. I don't do a lot of baking and I don't really bake bread, but my concern with it is I would want to expedite the learning process faster than I want to actually eat the bread. So I would want to make 3 loaves a week, but you can't even eat 1 full loaf a week, right?
Oh, I beg to differ. We're eating bread, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I went from paleo to sourdough. No, we have no problem eating the bread here. I do have a young adult, 22-year-old son who's helps me eat it. And butter makes anything taste good. So you put a lot of butter on the sourdough. It's good. So, okay, well, real quick, my journey is my brother-in-law, Kurt, has been bringing it over, for like Thanksgiving and stuff. And he's really into it. And so kind of like just planted a little bit of a seed. And then another dear friend of mine started making it during COVID. And he brought it over and it tasted so good. It was so awesome that my wife and I were like, hey, make us some more bread. We'll pay you. We'll pay you for the bread. Like, it's such good bread. We'll pay you for the fresh baked bread. And you can only ask somebody to make you bread so many times when eventually you're like, we have to make our own bread. And so that's what got us going. And there's plenty of instructional YouTube videos out there. And certainly I watched a bunch of those and, Googled it and got into it. And here we are. I'm probably, 9 or 10 loaves in.
How easy or hard is it?
Super easy. If I can do it, that's kind of a telltale.
How picky are you about your butter?
My butter? Pretty picky.
What do you get?
We're using that pure Irish Gold.
Kerrygold.
Kerrygold, is that what it is? Yeah.
Kerrygold's great. In terms of like a massively produced and widely available butter, Kerrygold is probably as good as it gets.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
We don't bake our own bread, but there's this little kind of gourmet market right around the corner. It's a grocery store, but it's like smaller and everything's super expensive. So we only buy specialty items there. We don't like stock up. But one thing that we do is buy a $10 loaf of bread. It's a local bakery. They don't bake it there, but it's a loaf of bread. They do they're kind of sourdough based, but then they'll have like a Gruyere bread or a rosemary and olive bread or whatever. And they're $10, which seemed astronomical to me the first time.
Yeah.
And then we ate it. And we're like, oh, well, I can't go back to eating regular bread at this point. I think I need a $10 loaf in my life every week. And so that's what we're hooked on now.
Well, that's cool. And yeah, that's, we've made garlic and herb bread here. So that's what you can do with the sourdough bread, right? Is just add stuff to it.
Totally.
Prior to throwing it into the oven. So it's easy to get creative, and you can certainly make, cherry bread or whatever.
Well, it looks good. I'm very impressed. It looks beautiful every time you post it, or send it, which is every other day, I think.
Well, the latest one is incredible. It's my best one ever of the 10 that I've done.
It should get better every time
because it has risen much higher. So when I did the folds, like you do these folds to kind of capture air in the dough, you pull and And for whatever reason, this one's got a much grander scale. And I'm excited about cutting some up here after this show.
We could tell the passion. We haven't seen this level of passion since you went bowling.
Right.
I do make pizza dough and noodles and pasta.
I got to admit, I was part of my knowing that you're a cook. First, I wanted to get validation from you, which you gave me, which was nice of you. And secondly, I wasn't sure if you were a baker or not, and I was hoping that you were going to chime in and we would have some bonding there. But I'm going to throw this thing out to you two to consider getting into it.
Okay.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, and I do bake just a little bit, but I can't imagine myself eating as much bread as I would actually want to make is the problem.
Well, they make great gifts.
Okay.
Yes.
Find somebody with an avocado tree and just trade. Or
Dude,
any fruit.
I'm eating a lot of avocado toast. That's definitely happening.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to see you're using your time. You're at home fruitfully with your family.
Yeah.
What else is new in your life? What's that board behind you?
Oh, that is a board I purposely put there for you guys to look at. Javier made me that board. It's a not an EPS, but a extruded.
XTR.
XTR extruded, right? Yeah, because epoxy is expanded and XTR is extruded.
Right.
Polystyrene. And it's a really killer board. It's 6'2". It's a good board for good 4 to 5 foot waves. It's got a concave deck. It's a really cool board. It's light. I really, really like it. But it needs a good wave. What
does the concave deck do?
Well, it's supposed to keep you a little bit, lower center of gravity, right? In some ways, though, I think too much concave in the deck can be a problem when, like, say you do a bottom turn and you go up the face and you want to set that inside rail to pull into a section or to drive. So setting that inside rail, now that I'm lower than the rail, if my foot's actually lower than the rail, it makes that setting of that inside rail a little bit more trickier. You have to, you have to, do it sort of con esfuerzo, with vigor. You have to set the rail. You just can't kind of baby it.
Got it. Right. Is it ideal for a certain style of wave, like maybe hollow surf?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Ideal.
Okay.
It was sort of built to go down to Sinaloa or Salina Cruz, those types of waves. It's a good board for like those right point sand bottom fast waves.
Yeah, I rode a shortboard a while back that just had a flat deck, and even that was noticeably, you had to adjust your surfing. It's like I'd get up and just kind of like on a right, get up and just go into my normal flow for a bottom turn, and the first one I just fell flat on my face because I wasn't kind of pushing down with my toes hard enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, I was like, man, I kooked that. What's my problem? And then I realized, no, it's that flat deck. You just got to get different momentum. You got to push it a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's amazing how nuanced and how sensitive, we have to be with our boards. Those flat decks were super classic in the 80s. I mean, that was really what everyone rode, was a real flat deck. And things are changing. That's the beauty of surfboard design. It's all cyclical. I'm looking right now, I'm on Mark Andrini's website, and I'm looking at the 6'8" pocket rocket, and I'm absolutely drooling. I'm like if I wasn't on a show with you right now, I would be ordering this board. That's kind of how lame I am or good I am, depending on.
I thought you're also on a buying freeze. You should be selling right now.
I know I am, but here. So, okay, let me start off the show with this. The East Coast is bombing right now, right? Hurricane Paulette just mowed through there with killer waves. Hurricane Teddy is just pumping. Certain areas are kind of blown out, but certain areas are getting tons of waves, and it's going to clean up and be good there for a couple of days here. And so I'm watching it on the Surfline cams, which is awesome, right? The surf line cam is just incredible. And so it got me thinking about winter. And then I started thinking about my boards for winter. And it's funny, you know, like I think about accessibility of boards. In other words, like I could call some people that I know really well and order a board, but I might not get it for 5 months.
Right.
And 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 that might be the case with Mark too, but I'm just looking at some boards and I'm like, okay, God, I'd love to have something like this. Who can I order it from that I can get it in 3 weeks? You know? And there's a lot of guys that can do that. You know? So anyway, I'm on Andrini's site, and Mark might be able to get me a board pretty quick. I actually ran into him down in the Mazatlan airport when I was bowling. He was bowling as well. Yeah. He and I go to the same bowling alley apparently. And
good for Mark.
yeah, it was really cool. I ran into Mark in that airport, and I ran into Hunter Joslin, my good friend Hunter from Indo Boards, the balance board, Indo balance board, just randomly, you know. But anyway,
so
Mark,
I don't want to burst your bubble or like dissuade you from buying boards or discussing boards, because this is great for the business and these guys are all our friends, so we should hype it. However, I consider real world limitations, and I would think that you have, whatever happens this winter, you have probably 3 to 5 boards for any one day this winter that would work perfectly fine and be really well suited for that surf for every single day of winter. So I'm not sure what the Andrini is going to add to your quiver that doesn't already exist.
Well, okay, so the very first year that we did the Sacred Craft, the boardroom show, the icons of foam. No, it was the second year. We honored Billy Castor, right? And the board that we replicated was the Chris O'Rourke model, which was a single wing, pintail, single fin, Chris O'Rourke's signature model that Bill made. And it's a killer board. It was 6'10". Berg let me borrow the board so that the guys could replicate it. And Bird, of course, was cool enough to let me ride the original. He's like, yeah, just wax it up and go ride it. So I rode it, really liked it. And then I took the winning board, and I liked the winning board so much. Ricky Carroll made the winning board, and it's an exact replica. And I rode that winning board for a couple of, maybe 3 winter seasons, a 6'10" single fin. And I promised myself I wouldn't ride it anymore because I was starting to like ding it up and get it kind of destroyed. And I wanted to keep it in my like collection of boards. I have all the winning boards from all of the 17, 18 Sacred Crafts, 20 Sacred Crafts that we've done, boardroom shows, icons of foam presented by US Blanks. So I need to get that board back in my riding stable, but I can't ride the one that I'm holding on to. So I'm looking for something like that. That's like a little bit more volume, more of like a 1977 single fin. Just got kind of the wide point pushed a couple inches forward, all of that stuff. Oh, do you want me to show off the bread? Is this the big one?
You got a piece of toast coming your way right now? Oh my Katrina, gosh.
A whole loaf.
That is a head-sized loaf.
Isn't that nice?
That is gorgeous.
Beautifully scored. See?
Truly. Adds lots of texture to each bite. You guys really got it down. I would pay more than $10 for that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It smells wonderful. But anyway,
that story you just told sounds A, like first world problems, and B, like a whole lot of justification to add a new board to your quiver.
That's right. That's exactly right. And did you see how my wife just walked in with bread and didn't say a word about it? Like she's all okay with this whole deal.
She is not okay with it. That was a distraction ploy to help you lose concentration.
Anyway.
Her goal is to fatten you up so you can surf less.
Dude, that's
you don't even want to get out of bed in the morning.
I believe that to be working. Interestingly, I got a call from a guy who's working with Taylor Knox. And as you know, Taylor's got full radical mid, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like 40-year-old workout regime, right?
Oh
for
yeah,
all of us, for guys like
totally.
you and me and all of us that are starting to get a little maybe pudgy in the middle area. So I'm interested to see what they send me regarding Taylor's online workout program, because I've always looked at his stuff and gone, and I know you've interviewed him, and I'm hoping to interview him soon. But I mean, the thing about the reason I would buy into Taylor's thing is because I've seen him in the water. I surf with him a lot. He's here in the winter a lot, surfing at Swami's, and all of his stuff seems real surf centric,
Yeah.
like all the stretching and everything. And he's kind of inspiring, like he's that mid 40s guy that surfs like he's 35, not 45.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I sincerely think that I did my best surfing when I was around 35 years old.
Really?
Yeah. Because I wasn't doing aerials or anything.
Right.
And
Yeah.
all my timing and everything was really, this was 20 years ago. All my timing was good. Like not that I've lost any, but I was still sprightly.
Yeah.
And of course, I was at the peak of my ability to read the ocean, and my eyesight was still okay. And, my hearing was better, all of those things,
It's an interesting thought. I was talking to somebody yesterday who was telling me a story about his dad who got the best way. He was, on a phone call with his dad, and his dad's in his 50s. And his dad said, "Oh yeah, I got such good surf yesterday. I got the best wave of my life." And I was thinking to myself, what an amazing thought to get the best wave of your life in your 50s. That's enough reason to keep doing it, and I think it's what you're saying. At first I heard that and I'm like, well, yeah, it's his best wave. He's forgotten like the barrels that he got at thumping beach breaks in his 20s and 30s. And so this was a long, easy to surf wave, and he had more fun on it than he can remember having maybe. But then I thought about other conversations I've had with guys like Terry Chung for sure. And guys in their, maybe Hackman even said this to me, guys in their 50s, 60s, looking at 70, who are still performing better. They're increasing their level of performance. And it's because of what you said about your ocean awareness and attunement is sharper than it ever was. That only compounds as you get older. And so you take fewer risks. You're probably not going to wipe out as much. You're probably going to sit in better position. You're going to pick the right wave. And then if you're looking to get barreled, you don't need a huge amount of athleticism to be able to do that once you're up and riding, if you're on a big enough wave. And so you can actually get the best waves of your life for decades beyond what you would think.
Yeah, you're right. It is interesting. It got me thinking, like, who's the oldest guy that got the best wave of his life? Like, how old is that guy? Like, was Hackman or Terry Chung? I mean, those guys Hackman's probably 70.
Yeah.
Right. And Terry Chung's probably right there too.
Yeah.
So the question is, is he, like, how old is that guy? How old is that guy that got the best wave of his life? It's almost a competition now, like it's
true. Of course. Yeah.
I want to be that guy.
Well, you can't do it just by surfing. You have to do what you're talking about. You got to get on the Taylor Knox ARC method or whatever he's selling, because if you sit at home eating sourdough and don't do any exercise, you're not going to perform at your peak when you're in the water.
I know. That's what I said. I went from paleo to sourdough. So
I know, it's funny. It's a good joke.
Yeah.
Well, let me know how that goes. I think what I do like about Taylor Knox's thing is it's not, there is a lot of, it's all about mobility. It's not like strength. There is certainly strength involved in it, but it's a really well-rounded program, it seems, and a lot of meditative practice built into it too.
Well, I mean, you know how it is. You get these calls and people, I get them all the time, and I know you do too. Like, hey, this guy's doing this. He wants to be on your podcast, and they just basically want a PR spot, Yeah. And that's fine. I get that, but I sort of go like the Howard Stern method of, look, we're going to talk for an hour, and the last 5 minutes we'll talk about whatever it is you're selling. Yeah. But I'm way more interested in hearing about. And you interviewed Taylor recently, right? Like within the last. So I'm interested, and maybe you guys touched on this, but I'm interested in hearing about, the K2 challenge that he won at Todos Santos. He was the very first winner. At the time, he wasn't known as a big wave surfer. In fact, he's still not known as a big wave surfer, right?
Right.
He won the very first double XL, what was then known as the K2 challenge. And, there's a ton of great stories that I'd like to sort of seed for him to start, you know, to then take and run with and talk to me about and tell the listeners about? I'm sure he did that with you.
No, we didn't. I mean, we didn't talk about specific surf stories from the past like that at all. We talked more about, you know, worldview and perspective and his mindset and why he was the bonehead surfer and how he's able to overcome that, and more kind of those things.
Wow, that's kind of interesting.
Philosophy.
Mm.
Well, I don't know if we just jump right in here, what you have to discuss today, but do you want to discuss Surf 100, the Stab event?
Well, I was going to text you this morning. I've tried all morning long to watch that, to figure out a way that I was going to get to see something of it, some boiled down version. Is there something out there? If there is, I couldn't find it.
I don't know if there's a boiled down version, but I had the same ambition this morning because I knew that it was a good event and I wanted to watch it. And I just hadn't had 100 minutes to invest in it since they aired it. So this morning I actually watched the full thing in its entirety, logged on, gave them $15 and watched it from beginning to end as I was doing some stuff around the house.
Yeah.
It's freaking so sick.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. It's totally worth the money, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to justify. I was thinking about what else do I spend $15 on? Obviously loaves of bread.
A movie.
Not really though. You know, it's like I spend $15 on Netflix and I watch 100 movies.
Yeah. Right.
So if I'm going to rent a movie, I think I pay like $3.99 or something now from Apple or Amazon Prime. I guess unless it's a new release, but I don't really watch the new releases for that reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, what in terms of entertainment do you pay $15 for one pop? If you're going to a movie theater, you would pay the $15. But I thought that price is steep. I think Stab is doing it based on what their needs are. Obviously, that's what you should do when you're running a business. But if you and I, as a consumer, just kind of weighed it against what other entertainment we pay for, it's not justifiable, except for the fact that there's no comparable in the surf world. Like there isn't any other long form surf content that is asking us to charge anything or that is offering like a live experience.
Yeah, but at $15, you no longer get to be part of the judging panel. Like they should almost discount it a little bit. Oh, you still get to judge?
Well, now that I watched it after the fact, I paid the video on demand version. Yeah. If you paid the $15 and watched it live, then you would judge.
No, but I mean, now you're paying the same price. So they should trim it down to like $9.99 or whatever, just because you don't get the full interactive, you know.
Right.
And the other thing about the $15 is you and I can't speak for you, but like I will easily pay $15 for an experiential entertainment thing. Like let's say it's $15 to go see, like, I don't know, just do something where I'm doing it rather than me watching it, you know, like, so if it's $15 to go to the county fair, or $15 for me to go have an experience here, or $15 to go golfing, or whatever it is, but I'm involved I'm engaged physically in it. $15 is no big deal, but $15 to pay and then to just sit and absorb does seem like a little bit much, like, because there's so much out there for us. That's much less cheap, much less expensive.
But I think, again, to Stab's point, they have a business to run.
Yes.
And they're choosing to do this as a pay-per-view option, not have sponsorships plastered all over it. So I was fine with it. Look, $15 ultimately isn't a stop point. You know, the difference between 10 and 15 isn't a stop point. So I paid it. I'm happy with the what I got out of it. It was highly entertaining. Yeah. And there was a lot of successes in this, and I'm going to try to enumerate them for you.
Yes.
And then I'll give you some highlights as well. But among the successes, 4 surfers is the right amount of surfers. You know, when we always talk about the CT having 32 surfers, that's too many. And we've said, oh, well, they should just have, 16. 16 over the course of the year might be doable. But honestly, 4 surfers in 100 minutes was awesome. I don't know that there's a better format. 100 minutes is plenty of time for each of them to kind of find their place in the lineup and get their 2 waves. 4 surfers is enough for me to be able to understand who's who, what their strengths are, what their backstory is. And I'm invested in each of them for different reasons. I'm rooting for each of them for different reasons. So I think that all of that was a big improvement upon what we're used to anyways.
What about downtime? Was there downtime that was like, do you feel like your economy of time was well spent?
There was still a bit of downtime, but Stab did a good job of pre-producing a couple of packages. They had profile pieces on each of the surfers that they filmed in advance. They detoured to Michael Ciamarella, who's their in-house head judge. And he had a little comedic routine that they would cut together with old footage of Kelly. And then they had the commentary team in San Clemente. So this was all filmed a couple of weeks prior, the 100 minutes filmed in real time. Then they make it available to everybody at the same time around the world. And the commentary team does that portion live. So they're watching in real time as us viewers are. And so that was Yaden Nickel, Dane Reynolds, and Salema Masakela. Sal does a fine job hosting. Dane honestly adds virtually zero to the conversation. He seems almost bothered to be there. He has surfing expertise, but he's not really offering it up in the insightful way that, let's say, Kelly Slater does. Kelly's obviously eager to talk. I think Kelly probably has a bit more narcissism than Dane has. And so Kelly's eager to talk and eager to share, and Dane kind of feels like he's almost too cool. And he's also, I don't know, just not that insightful, like even when he does share something, it's kind of like, yeah, but I can assess, me being a low intermediate surfer can assess that at the waves at North Point. I didn't need Dane to tell me. And Yaden was a great addition. Yaden is gregarious. He's energetic. He's like getting out of his chair. He's giving you all these insights because he grew up in that area. He knows all of the locals. Hey.
Uh-oh.
Sophie's barking. He knows all of the locals. So he's giving you backstories. Because, again, this was filmed during a free surf. Hold on a second. Hey.
David's going to beat his dog. He's probably got an old chain back there. Oh, did you hear that? That was a... Oh, he's beating his dog right now. That is horrible. I don't know how... Somebody should call animal control in Huntington Beach. Oh, they don't have animal control in Huntington Beach. That is just horrible.
Sorry.
I can't believe you did that.
What?
Oh, you missed my commentary the whole time you were gone. It's bonus coverage, bonus
I'll listen later.
Content.
I'll listen later. So yeah, Yaden was great in that. Again, this was filmed during a free surf. They didn't get permits and keep people from the lineup. So there's actual surfers in the lineup that aren't involved with the production. And as those guys are getting waves, Yaden's like, oh, that's so-and-so, he has 3 kids and his brother used to surf out here and charge it. And all of that stuff was really helpful to providing interest and color,
Yeah, that's cool.
The other thing that this allows for, by not having the actual permits and trying to create boundaries for what they're doing, it leaves open this window for magic to happen. And it happened a couple of different times. And the biggest moment was 19-year-old Ollie Henry got the wave of the day. And so the 4 surfers are Jay Davies, Jack Robinson, Jacob Wilcox, and Cale Walsh. 19-year-old Cale Walsh. I think he's about 19. So Cale was sitting out the back and he didn't get a wave for 40 minutes. And the other 3 surfers are putting scores on the boards, and the commentators are like, what is Cale doing? And so the camera shows that he's sitting deeper than everybody, and there's one guy deeper than Cale. And they're like, oh, well, who's that guy? And like, that guy is gonna, like, if the good wave comes, Cale might not even get it because there's one guy sitting deeper than Cale, Well, Cale ended up getting a wave, and then like the bigger, better waves were behind it. And this kid was in priority position. And this thing is literally the wave of the day. It's lurching, and Jack Robinson has his mic on in the water, and Jack is number 2 in priority, but they're kind of shoulder to shoulder. And he actually says to the guy, he goes, hey, I'll give you $300 for this wave. And Ollie like didn't even flinch. He like was like, no. And Jack's like, well, you better go, don't back out, go. And you see this thing lurching like you would do your buddies who's in position. You kind of got to like hype them up, or you almost are hoping they do back out and you can go. But Jack pulls back at the last second. This kid, Ollie, just knifes into this crazy, I mean, the thing was double to triple overhead. Right at the bottom, makes a subtle adjustment, and he's standing in this huge cavern. The thing's 8 feet wide, and he soul arches back and just stands there and gets blown out of the thing. And Yada Nickel and Dane Reynolds are like, oh my God, who was that? That was insane, you know? And the fact that Jack Robinson was trying to bribe him off of it is also incredible. And so like that moment was magic. The WSL could never have that moment, you know? And so that's what I loved about this format was this kind of element of relatability to our normal surf session, but with demigods, you know?
Yeah, that's cool, man. I'm stoked. I actually read some stuff on Stab. Like I said, I was searching for it, and they basically are like, hey, spoiler alert, if you read the rest of this, we're going to be kind of breaking down what happened, so be advised. But of course I read it, and I had heard about this, but your version's a little bit more magical than what I read.
Well, what's funny too is Jack Robinson is such a frother, he would not let it go. For the rest of the 90 minutes or 100 minutes, he paddles over to Ollie and he's like, hey, Ollie, tell me about that wave. Was it as good as it looked? Like, how big was it? When you were inside of it, how big was it in there? Oh, I can't believe you didn't let me go on that one. Dude, I would have given you $300. I would, wait, maybe more. How much would it take? What if I gave you 500? Like, he just could not let it go, you know? Which is rad to see that Jack's like that frothed out when you know he's gotten way better waves than that out there repeatedly.
Yeah.
He just needs more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So among the other highlights, or what also was great about the 4 guys having 4 surfers, is that each of them did their own kind of best thing. Like Jay Davies got the best wave of the heat. Jack Robinson won the event. He got the 2 best waves of the heat. But to be honest, Jacob Wilcox might have done the best surfing of the 100 minutes. Like if you tabulated all of the wave scores, he would have scored higher than Jack. Jack happened to get the 2 best, but Jacob Wilcox is surfing unbelievably well. And then Cale Walsh, waiting and sitting out the back, he did get one really sick one. He just couldn't back up the score. So it was like each of them had their kind of highlight moments that they could really go home proud of. Another thought that I had was they were talking about how Jacob Wilcox and Jack Robinson grew up together. They're the same age. They competed against one another since they were 8 years old. And I got to thinking, because Jacob surfs amazingly, right? So why is it that we all love Jack Robinson so much and we barely have heard of Jacob Wilcox? And part of me thinks it is the media machine spun Jack into our awareness. But I don't think that's fully responsible, because you just watch Jack stand on a wave and there's something about his aura. And even though Jacob does these incredible turns that you cannot deny objectively, there's some gravitational pull that your eye has to Jack. You have any thoughts on why this happens in surfing?
I mean, I guess we always use the N word. I guess it's the nuance in the little things like, how maybe he waits until the last minute to drop in, and his hand positioning, and maybe the way that his body is contorted, and the depth of the bend in his deep bottom turn. And, I don't have one specific thing where you can go, yeah, this is it. And of course, then there's the body of work that he's presented to us, which sort of adds to the aura, whether it's through Billabong as a kid kind of pumping him up, or whoever his sponsor was. I think it was Billabong.
He had Quicksilver when he was real young, and then Billabong for most of it.
What he's done in Hawaii at a young age, that some of it could be that he has this sort of classic Australian ochre father who's just like, helping to, cement sort of a foundation for him as a young charger. All of that stuff plays into it, I guess. And some people are just a little quieter, maybe Jacob's just a little bit demure, and maybe just not as doesn't necessarily want to be, not that Jack does, because Jack comes off as very humble, in my opinion.
I can see you're searching for the answer, but I don't think we've landed on it. And I can't pinpoint it either, but there are certain figures in surf that have it.
Yeah.
And certainly John Florence is one of those. Tom Curran would be one of those. Dave Rostovich, I would put in that category. Where it's like, yeah, there's
Those
other,
those are all kind of style masters. So I guess that's a big part of it, right?
could be. Because there's plenty.
Rob has that.
Yeah. There's plenty, like, if Gabriel Medina is the biggest kind of adversary. Well, no, adversary for John Florence. They both have 2 world titles. They're both kind of at their prime at the same time. They both get barreled really well. They both get, do crazy airs. Why are we more kind of drawn towards John? You and not only you and I feel like I can speak for most of the surf world where we're kind of drawn to John's aura, for lack of a better word.
Well, I mean, look, I think a lot of it for me has to do with, so what you're basically saying is that they're equal. Why are we drawn towards one, not the other?
Right.
And for me, the reason that I'm drawn to John has to do with his humility.
Okay.
And he's got sort of a sincere humbleness about him. He's also North American. I mean, I'm going to wave the American flag just as hard as they're going to wave the Brazilian flag, That's
well,
part of it. But that's not all. That's definitely not a big chunk of it for my draw to John. Plus we've seen John since I've literally saw John in the Surfer magazine offices when he was like 5 years old.
Right.
His brothers just like little rugrats. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So we've seen John, in the North American media and in the global media. And I'm sure that weighs into it.
Humility is an interesting one because that is a common denominator with all those guys I just named.
Yeah.
The thing is,
they're right sized. They know where they are. And they're right sized in the world. You know what I mean? They're neither the, superheroes of their fantasies, nor are they the lepers of their fears.
Yeah. It's the other problem with humility is there's plenty of other surfers that are humble that okay, well, there's other surfers that express humility that don't have the aura factor. So you can't just say that humility will give you that allure. Whatever. Wade Carmichael seems to be pretty humble, but he certainly doesn't have that aura. But it seems to be a factor for sure because Tom Curran, Rasta, all those guys definitely share that. Jack Robinson certainly shares that. So
yeah, and maybe the fact that we can't put our thumb on it is part of it,
Yeah, I guess so. But it made me feel a little bit sad for Jacob Wilcox. I was like, dude, this kid, how come he's surfing just as hard, charging getting just as many results, and then everybody still wants Jack's autograph?
Don't feel sad. There's
Okay.
a lot better people to feel sad for.
One person I didn't feel sad for, but is worth mentioning, is Jay Davies, who is currently working as on a tugboat. That's his new job. So he had 2 years left on his deal with Ruka, and when COVID hit, they cut him, and so he found himself needing income, and so he's working on a tugboat. And they actually go and Stab went in their backstory piece and interviewed him, like showed him doing his job, pulling big boats in to port. And I started by saying I don't feel sad for him, and I don't. Yeah, I do too. It kind of endeared me to him. And if the result means that I don't get to see Jay Davies surf as much, that part bums me out because I love him as a surfer. But I was like, everybody has to work, dude. And like living the life of a pro surfer, you're lucky that you ever got paid for a day. No matter who you are, no matter how talented you are, you're lucky if you ever got paid for one day to surf. And so I don't feel bad that you don't anymore,
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm stoked. I'm real stoked to see guys embrace sort of, the second phase of their livelihoods, their fiscal livelihoods.
Mm-hmm.
You may have seen. I saw on Instagram, DJ Hobgood was like, "Hey, check it out! I got my real estate license in Florida, and I'm reading these books." And it was just a really cool Instagram thing, because he was embracing it. You know, he sees the writing on the wall, or it's been there for a while, I'm sure, and he's trying to make changes for the better. And there's there's no such thing as bad work. You know, like hard work is hard work, whether you're at Lowe's or the coffee store, or you know, on the water as a tugboat guy, a pilot, or whatever he is, and whatever it is, you know, like hard work should be. I mean, it's rewarding, obviously, personally, but it should be something that, and it is something that we all sort of hold as a really high ideal.
Yeah, I agree. And I keep in contact a little bit with CJ, and his wife is in real estate. That's a great thing for them to be able to do together. And by the way, he's positioned so well. Like, who wouldn't want to work with CJ if they're buying or selling their home in Florida, like in Orlando area, you know?
Exactly. No, you totally nailed it.
You're gonna crush it.
I got my choice between Steve Jones or CJ
Right.
Hopgood.
Exactly.
CJ Hopgood, maybe he'll tell me a story. They're each going to get 6%, whatever.
I could see CJ and his wife having a reality show on HGTV next year.
Right. Me too.
You know what I mean?
On an Escalade, just cruising in like a white Escalade going, yeah, we're going to pull up and show this. Yeah, I could see that.
Selling homes and like renovating or something. I don't know what the concept is, but I could easily see them doing that.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, this segues perfectly into Adriano de Souza's retirement. If you want to discuss that, I don't know what else you got.
I mean, I think you just did.
Well,
that's it.
I mean,
is Adriano's retired.
I got more to say about it because it dovetails with what you're saying. Like, it's important to identify when either writing is on the wall, or aside from external factors, it's important to identify when you're maturing past a level of wanting to travel the world 11 months out of the year, living out of a suitcase and not investing in the relationships of people who have invested in you, you know? And so Adriano said a number of different things made me come to this decision. For the past 15 years, I gave my life to surfing, and I was completely dedicated. I lived surfing 1000% of the way. Competing without passion is not the attitude of a champion, and it doesn't match with the energy of the sport. Now I would like to try some other things, like being a part of specialty events without so much pressure, or just go on a fun surf trip with friends. I want to celebrate these past 15 years. During this time, I built relationships around the world with loved ones and developed a strong connection with family, friends, and fans. He's going to compete next year, presuming there is a world tour in 2021, and that'll be his farewell season. So what do you think about this? Okay, yeah, please.
Adriano, you and I have spoke about our admiration for Adriano de Souza. He's been our sort of blue collar lunch pail world champion since he did it. And his determination is second to none, which is why he became a world champion. I was going to say it's a bummer if the COVID situation has forced this to occur. But since he's competing already, he's committed to 2021, then that's certainly not the case. Because I would say that if anybody had to quit their dream because of the COVID thing, that's a bummer to me. Mm-hmm. You know, like let's say somebody loses sponsorship and it's all kind of unraveling, and it's like, oh, you know, that to me would have been a bummer. You know, I want to see him go out on his own terms, and it sounds like he is, so I'm stoked for him. And I don't know if I really want to see him in, like, on the other hand, if you're just mailing in 2021 because you get to do like a Brazilian, you know, world, you know, like, what do they call those?
Victory lap?
Victory lap, thank you. Then I'm kind of like, you know what? Let's let his spot be taken by somebody who's hungry and young and ready to charge it the way he was 15 years ago. But that's not, you know, it's none of my business.
Do you think his choice is based on the fact that he knows he can't compete with Idolo, for example?
Oh, with the young, yeah. Well, that's probably a big part of it. But I mean, he went so far as to say that his heart wasn't in it anymore.
Well, that's different. If your passions change, that's one thing. But if your passion is still there, but you recognize you can't surf as good as Idolo can.
Is that what you're getting from it? Like,
I'm
What you
not. I'm
read,
asking if that's what you
I
think.
might be, but what you read, what I heard you read was that I've lost my spark.
Yeah, but I don't. That is what he said. But if he felt like he couldn't compete with Idolo, I don't know that he would say that.
I
But
would.
I'm wondering if that's kind of behind it. Where look, Kelly Slater still dilutes himself to believe that he
Dude,
could.
come on.
No,
Slater can do this.
no, he can't.
Slater's got the air game.
Dude, Slater.
All right, all right, all
If the waves are barreling in 8 feet, Slater
Yeah.
can beat everybody in the world.
Yeah.
If he's surfing crappy snapper that gets moved to D-Baw, if he's surfing, whatever, all the other spots, if he's even surfing in his own wave pool, he can't compete with Idolo, Gabriel, John. Should I go on?
Well, no, but I mean, this to
Felipe.
me, I mean, I hate to sound like a homer for Kelly, but to me, this sounds like, I mean, my response to you is, well, then why aren't all the contests in 6 to 8 foot barreling beach breaks or North Point? Like
Agreed.
the North
They
Point
should be.
event, yeah. Like what happened to the Purple Blob Tour? Like if we're having 3 foot D-Baw events, we're all tuning out. Like it's over, Johnny. Like that's not exciting anymore.
No, I
There's
agree.
just too much killer content out there. And I'm
Totally
not going
agree.
to watch 3 foot D-Baw with Ethan Ewing going up against whoever and an onshore wind picking up.
So 100% agree. And if that was the world tour scenario, Adriano couldn't compete there either, like with the top 5 to 10.
Adriano charges, I think if it was like, if there was a tour that was 8 foot French beach breaks, Adriano has a chance.
Not at the top 5 and maybe not even at the top 10.
All right.
Like I'm wondering how much of his decision. So my thought with this is Adriano's biggest contribution to our sport is teaching us that work ethic pays off and that milking a wave to the inside, doing a foam climb, 99 times out of 100 isn't going to really change the winner of the heat, but 1 time out of 100 it does. And that score ends up making a difference or putting you into a different seating in the next event. And that one little thing happening in that event too, then pushes you to the next. And maybe this year you didn't win a world championship, but you went from 22nd to 18th. And then one little thing falls into place next year by working that hard and you move up to 11th. And in 2015, those things all coalesced and he won his world championship. And so I think that level of dogged determination and work ethic is what his contribution was. And a lot of his predecessors, I guess, are building off of that and having a lot of success. But he doesn't need to keep teaching us that lesson. And his talent isn't good enough to actually keep up with everybody who's applying that work ethic with raw talent. And so do you want to do the next 5 years on tour when I think he got married a year or two ago? So your wife probably has some, requests and it's like, do you want to spend the next 5 years bumming your wife out, bumming yourself out because you're not competing at the level that you want to and burning out? And I think he's smart enough to recognize that he doesn't want to do those things.
I think you nailed it. You've thought this out and it makes sense what you said. And I would also add to what you're saying is that Idolo has that work ethic. Idolo has got Adriano's drive. So, that's going to be hard to beat.
And Idolo's probably 8 years younger. So he's got, he's positioned better in his life right now to spend all of that time. So what do you think he'll do next?
Adriano?
Yeah.
Sell real estate. Bake bread? I don't know.
The world is his oyster.
Speaking of an oyster, I've got a breakdown for you of what's happening in Hawaii as we move. We're just, literally a month away maybe from the Hawaiian season. The Hawaiian winter surfing season, the Hawaiian Pro at Haleiwa, the first event of the Vans Triple Crown, it's tentatively set, according to the WSL website, it's tentatively set. I think it kicks off November 12th. The women's Maui Pro, the Shishido Maui Pro at Honolulu Bay, November 25th. It's upcoming. Same with the Vans World Cup at Sunset Beach, November 25th, upcoming. The Billabong Pipe Masters, December 8th, upcoming according to the WSL website. Right now, David, as of September 22nd, today, there's a mandatory 14-day quarantine for anyone coming into Hawaii, which has now been extended through October 15th. This essentially bans tourists from entering until October 15th, maybe. Beginning October 15th, travelers who test negative for COVID within 72 hours prior to their flight may be exempt, not for sure, but may be exempt from the 14-day quarantine mandate. There's been a resort bubble, so to speak, that's being developed, this concept to open tourism on Kauai. But right now, visitors are urged to postpone their trips to Hawaii so that the local communities can address the crisis without tourism invading the healthcare system. On Oahu right now, David, there's a stay-at-home order. Everyone on the island has to stay at home. That may be lifted soon. If you wanted to leave for Oahu today, you'd have to fill out a form explaining why and where you will be quarantining. While you're there each and every day, you would need to check in with a travel app that they've created. You would need to leave this location where you're quarantined on the travel app. And if you do get caught not quarantining, it's punishable by imprisonment or a fine. After your 14 days, you've cleared the quarantine, you can now move about, but you're not allowed to because there's a stay-at-home order, and travel to Hawaii is simply not recommended. Obviously, this is all fluid and changing, but it doesn't look like there's going to be any updates to this until October 15th, which would be just, whatever it is, a month from the first event. Oahu vacation rentals are closed, and Hawaii beaches are open only for exercise, fishing, and food gathering. Congregation, i.e. a surf event, is not allowed. Parks, trails, and beaches are limited to solo exercise and access to the ocean.
In short, there's no chance they're doing a Pipe Masters.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or the Triple Crown, which starts November 12th.
And there's no chance. I mean, look, this feels like the exact same conversation you and I were having in March, at the beginning of March, where we're like, hey, so Scott, is the boardroom show going to happen in May? It's like, well, I would like to, but I'm not. We're in the exact same spot. Yeah. And call it off. Cut the losses now. Call it off. Don't make any promises that you can't keep to anybody. And the WSL, like, they actually have a risk. They have a liability by not only bringing surfers, asking surfers to travel, bring them into that environment. They have a responsibility to Oahu to not come in and infect them, infect their land, which I mean, look, if the people living there are currently locked down at a stay-at-home order, they're going to be like, well, when we get out, we need a bit of breathing room for a while before all of the tourists. I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are also eager for tourism to come back because so much of the economy is based on that. But also, it's like, dude, ease us into it. And there's one thing to like allow tourists to come back. It's a different thing to have professional sporting events held on island that's going to drive, tourism in that way. So I don't think there's any chance that this happens in a month.
Well, the Billabong Pipeline Masters is the first event of the 2021 season. So it looks like that's going to be canceled. By the way, back in June, which was a while ago, there was a survey of local Hawaiian residents. 81% of those surveyed said they didn't want tourists visiting their community.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Well, bummer. I mean, bummer for the WSL, bummer for us as surf fans, but
there's bigger fish to fry here.
Much bigger fish to fry. And how about, let's see a plan B. I would love to see a plan B.
Plan B is like rewatching, I don't know, some event somewhere from 2015. Maybe they'll do like Adriano's season 2015 and rewind or something.
Yeah. That's what they've been doing. So, Murph the Surf.
Yeah, I got him down here too. I know you mentioned a documentary film that you watched that you enjoyed, right?
No, it's a podcast series that's out.
Oh,
That this reporter spent, I don't know, 8 months or so interviewing Murph and like spending time with him and doing all the research, and made I think it's a 9-part podcast series about it. And so I had him on to discuss the whole thing. And
well, let's bring Warshaw into this because
yeah, go for it. Do
I
you
wanna
have
know
his?
yeah, so Warshaw, I emailed Warshaw this story actually when it came out in Florida today, the day he died. I'm like, hey Matt, FYI, just sent that off. And then he sent me back a thing that was like, I can't believe the East Coast Hall of Fame put this guy in there. At the end of the day, this guy brutally murdered 2 women, like just tore open their torsos. And it's all over the internet right now what Matt said. I just happened to notice that Beach Grit did a full on.
Matt wrote the article and published it on Beach Grit.
Yeah. And so that's what's fascinating to me about this Murph the Surf story is Warshaw's reply to it, which is, how can the East Coast Hall of Fame just ignore the fact that this guy brutally murdered 2 women?
Totally.
And so what, I guess my question to you is, as a society, especially in the United States, we've been really big on giving people a second chance. And look what Murph the Surf did after he sort of went to jail. He had a come to Jesus moment, and he did a lot of good, according to Murph the Surf fans.
He was doing prison ministry.
Right, prison ministry. I don't even know how he got out of prison, if he murdered 2 women, but he got out, he was paroled, and he did all these great things, or so-called great things, regarding ministry, right? But if you're the head of the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame, and certainly he has credentials to be a Hall of Famer, and I guess it kind of comes down to, what does it take to be a Hall of Famer? Like, you just got to open up surf shops and do a lot for the surfing industry, and 2 murders be damned, you're in. And then like, it's kind of interesting that there's not a lot of forgiveness on Matt's end of the equation. And Matt, I'm sure, would argue, hey, talk to these women's parents, like, how do you think they feel about Murph the Surf becoming a Hall of Famer?
So I've thought long and hard about this as well, because obviously I listened to that podcast series and I had to interview the guy. And so I was steeped in it for a couple of weeks. And it's interesting that so much of the reporting doesn't report on the murders, because he also was responsible for the largest jewel heist in American history at that time, where he and another buddy stole the Star of India. And it was actually like 23 jewels out of this museum in New York. And so that, it was sexy. It was like these good looking, charismatic surfers, East Coast champion surfer, is also a jewel thief. And there were no victims in that heist. Like, they didn't brandish a weapon. Like, the guard didn't get hit over the head, nothing. They were in and they were out. So there was a lot of, and they made a Hollywood movie about it. So all the reporting kind of focuses on that. In the murders at Whiskey Creek, he never actually fesses up to. He and another guy were on the boat. A witness saw them going out with the 2 women on the boat. The women did not come back, and the bodies were later found, brutally murdered. And so Jack never fesses up to it.
Does he say that he didn't do it?
Yeah. He said that he did not do it. He said that it actually wasn't until years later. The guy that I interviewed, the reporter, said the first instance that he found of Jack saying that there was actually a 3rd accomplice on the boat that was responsible for the murders, and that Jack witnessed it, but he didn't actually pull the trigger or assist in the murders. The first time that this reporter identified that version of Jack's story was in 2015. So well after Jack went to trial, well after Jack served prison time, well after Jack had come out of prison, he came up with this story that there was a third person on the, or I should say a fifth person on the boat. So in addition to all of the interviews that this Nathan Scott had done with Jack, Jack never really felt remorseful. He never, not only did he not admit to it, but he was like real cagey whenever he was asked about it. And so Nathan got a hold of the victims' families, and the families were actually really reticent to engage with him because the media had done such a poor job of focusing attention on the victims. Even at the time with the murders, they were still talking more about the heist that took place years ago. So, but the whole point of Nathan Scott's podcast series was to shine light on the victims and to kind of hold Jack accountable for his role in the murders, whether or not he actually pulled the trigger. Just hold some, express some level of sorrow or sadness or something.
I mean, you didn't come back from the boat, tie the boat up to the dock and go call the cops.
Exactly. And so the fact that Jack never really fessed up to any of that or took any responsibility for it makes him a lot less redeemable in my mind. So I've struggled with this exact thing of like, why doesn't Warshaw have more sympathy for this guy, or more forgiveness and grace for a guy who clearly turned his life around? I don't know that Jack Murphy necessarily did any of that stuff in earnestness. Like, he was such a showman that you kind of wonder, is his prison ministry a way for him to cover up the bad deeds, or is he sincerely,
well, I mean,
I don't know.
I just think at the core, a core value of Jesus Christ is honesty. And so if you're going to wave the Jesus Christ flag, then you better be honest, one way or the other. But to be cagey is to suggest dishonesty, which is to suggest that he's not following the path that Jesus Christ laid down.
Right.
And so, I don't know.
I think that you just,
I'm glad Matt brought that to light, that there's not a lot of, and I'm glad the podcast guy did too.
I really just wanted there to be a moment of apology and accepting his role and feeling sorrow for it. And there was none of that at any moment through it. And so it made me a lot less sympathetic to his own kind of situation, and also made me feel like he was more of a snake oil salesman than an earnest prison minister, Not to speak disparagingly of the recently deceased Jack Murphy, by the way, died at his home in Crystal River, Florida, September 12th, 2020, at the age of 83. He had diabetes and some other complications, so it's probably just all health related. The cause of death was not stated at the time that this was all reported on, but certainly an interesting figure.
Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of things. I have a must-see moment and I have a Duke.
Okay, let's hear him.
Well, my must-see moment is, I think his name's Air Brown. You know this guy?
Ari Brown, the finless surfer in Australia.
Yeah. Ari Brown. There's an episode on Surfer Magazine called Alternative Lines, I believe, and I might have this messed up. I just watched this. It's fascinating. Ari Brown's Alternative Lines. Wizards are real and they surf finless. And it's produced by Fun Boys Entertainment. And it's a classic sort of mockumentary style interview with Ari Brown as he surfs on an array of equipment: finless boards, foils, guns, fishes, single fins, foamies. And he takes this real, like I said, sort of like parody on this wizardry thing. And it's pretty fun. I actually laughed out loud. I LOL'd, emoji'd. And I urge you, Davey, I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
I haven't seen it, but Ari is amazing. He's hilarious, and his surfing is Gumby. Like, it's really interesting.
Yes, this guy's highly marketable, in my opinion.
For sure. My must-see moment is Cloud Chase. It's about an 8-minute short edit with John Florence, Nathan Florence, Matt Biola, and Albie Layer attempting backflips and double alley-oops in the windy surf of Maui and completing them. It's crazy. Really, really radical surfing. Great production value to the piece. So Cloud Chase, we'll post it on spitpodcast.com. The other thing that I'm really enjoying more and more all the time is the Ragland Surf Report.
Did you see that? That most recent one was Strider.
Yeah. It's about the Ragland Surf Report where he's not a pyramid scheme. He's selling this surf supplement, but it's not a pyramid scheme. That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's so funny. And they're showing before and afters of people who have taken the supplement. And there's 3 or 4 of them, but one of them is Strider on the left and Ellen DeGeneres as the after.
Exactly. That one made me laugh out loud. That Ragland Surf Report's pretty classic.
It's so good. It pops up and it's sometimes they're 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm like, God, I don't want to sit. I'm just scrolling. I don't want to spend 3 to 5 minutes. And within 20 seconds, he's got me rolling, just laughing so hard. It's so good. So people should just follow that on Instagram and watch all of them because I thought the guy was going to run out of steam. You know, Luke Cederman, like a year or 2 ago, I'm like, well, he's funny, but this gimmick can only last. He's only getting better and sharper. So my Duke is, this story was reported on Beach Grit. Lou Harris of the Black Surfing Association in Rockaway, New York. He gives free surf lessons and ocean safety lessons to kids. And basically the Black Surfing Association has a couple different divisions, but he's the founding member of the division that operates in Queens. And this is his quote, and I think it kind of sums it all up. He says, I don't care if you're Black, white, Asian, or Muslim. If there's 5 of you and you're hanging out on the corner with no job, you're going to get into trouble. And so he offers this based out of Queens. Again, free surf lessons, ocean safety, actually does free skate lessons as well, and takes kids surfing in Rockaway. So it seems like a really good program that he's running. And by all accounts of everybody in the community think he's amazing. So shout out to Lou Harris.
Cool. That's very cool. So my Duke, actually 2 guys, Doug Falter is one of them. Doug is a surfer who lost his surfboard at Waimea Bay in February of 2018 in huge waves, and was amazed to discover that it had been found in the Philippines recently, 5,200 miles away. His lost surfboard in a big swell at Waimea. Out to sea. I was really upset as I managed to catch the biggest waves of my life on this board, he wrote. That's why this board means so much to me. Doug Falter had hoped that a local fisherman might find the board, or that it might wash up in Kauai, which he heard was a possible landing spot for lost boards, but he never thought it would turn up in the Philippines, 5,200 miles away. The new owner had purchased the board from a Filipino fisherman to learn how to surf, and then he contacted our friend David, Hawaii-based board shaper Lyle Carson on Facebook. Said Doug Falter, the board's owner, as bummed as I was when I lost it, now I'm happy to know my board fell into the hands of someone wanting to learn the sport in the Philippines. So the new board's owner is also my Duke, Giovanni Bronzuela. He's a primary school teacher in the Philippines, and he bought the board for $40 from a local fisherman. And this was 6 months after the board got away from Doug at Waimea. The board has since turned pale yellow color, of course, due to the sun damage. But the name Lyle Carson was still visible. So Giovanna contacted Lyle Carson, who alerted Doug Falter of the miraculous find. It turned out to be a surfboard from Hawaii, and I couldn't believe it myself, said Giovanna Bronzuela. It's been my dream to learn to surf and ride the big waves here in the Philippines. For now, I can use his surfboard. I told him I will take good care of it. So Falter and Giovanna have been in contact via Facebook. And of course, Falter wants to go over there, but because of the COVID thing, they're kind of on a wait and see thing. But eventually, Doug has been sending some learning, books and some necessities for Giovanna to use in his primary teaching capacity, primary school teacher. And eventually he's going to go over there with a board that might be better for Giovanna to learn on. and I'm imagining, going to swap boards, and Doug will get his original board back.
Crazy.
Yeah, those are my.
What a crazy story.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
Where did Lyle post that in his Instagram? Where did you see that?
I found it on CNN, believe it or not.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow, that shows how terrible of reporters we have in surfing, journalists in surfing. If CNN beats us all to the story.
Oh yeah.
I think Lyle would post that. That's crazy. I mean, I'm baffled by that. My kook, I have two kooks, Squire Winter and Sarah Foote. Squire Winter was arrested for stalking Stephanie Gilmore, and Sarah Foote actually just got bailed out for an earlier arrest where she was stalking Mick Fanning. What's up with these stalkers, dude? Don't stalk our surf stars. Here's the great thing about being a surf celebrity is it's not like being a celebrity at all. You can still roam the world with complete anonymity. It's just you make a little bit more money than you would if you weren't a pro surfer, and you get to surf for a living. You don't have to work a real job. So these stalkers are to blame for
what happened
ruining.
to the Kooks from the Salt Creek incident?
You know what? I actually, I don't know if he didn't reply to my last text message or vice versa, but I never got to the bottom of that one. I need to look into it, actually.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, get back to it. So
right.
Stalkers, Kooks. Have you ever dealt with a stalker, Scott?
No, thank God.
Well, if we do
not on that level, dude. I am not on that level. Hey,
if we do our job good enough here, you just might end up with a stalker.
That's where we cross the line. If we ever get stalkers, we have to quit. Well, David, I think we've done a great show today.
I'm proud of it.
I just think that. I don't know that. I just think that. And until next time, adios and aloha.
All right. Good job.